Welcome in the latest episode of the Betting the Pitch Major League Baseball podcast. I'm your host, the real _G Warner, across all social media platforms. Tonight's episode is for the Thursday, August 13th card, recording it still on the late side of Wednesday, August 12th in Dallas, Texas. And you can find this podcast wherever your podcast, Betting the Pitch, Apple Podcasts, and on Spotify. Also, if you're looking for YouTube at the real _G Warner, Instagram, where we posted a reel today with our best bet on Wednesday at the real _G Warner, and of course across Twitter and Patreon, the real _G Warner. So let's go through our first look at these numbers on the Thursday, August 13th card. We have a bunch of day games, so get ready for that. It's my first look at the numbers. I do make my lines every night, and let's see if there are any new games added along the way. But we'll start in Miami with the Pittsburgh Pirates and Braxton Ashcraft on the road at Miami Marlins and Tyler Phillips. Tyler Phillips, you might know because he used to punch himself in the face when he came out of the bullpen. Well, he's moved to a starting pitcher. He's been, I think, really good in that role, despite took a little while for him to get there, but I think he's been plenty good so far this season. I've had good success backing him. Currently, Phillips a plus 112 home underdog. Total is 8 in this one, minus 110 each way. This is a 1:10 Eastern time start. So get ready for some getaway day. What used to be big strike zones with Major League Baseball umpires, but now with the ABS system and challenges, it's supposed to be more fair and more accurate, which is good, but also kind of diminishes the value on unders on getaway day. You could say that, though. Usually last game of a series, you see some players rotating or on the bench or resting, plus day games after night games are usually the worse or inferior catching options. A lot of those sort of things will come through. And the big question, I think, for most of these series is figuring out who's been using the bullpen. And that's the big question in this matchup as well. First 5 total, might as well get that out there. That is a 4.5 right now, minus 115 to under. And the two teams in this matchup have basically both tried to become better towards the end of the first half of the season or towards the Major League Baseball trade deadline. The Pirates were undoubted buyers. Honestly, were buyers coming into the season, brought in Brandon Lau, who's played a great second base for them offensively, and Ryan O'Hearn, who's unfortunately on the injured list at this point, has not really been replaced. Esmeralda Valdez was a great flash in the pan. I think it's still an over 900 OPS entering today, but has been moved down to 7th in the lineup. So there's a lot of questions on the Pirates offense. They were talking about it on the broadcaster pregame today, and that was a big concern for what usually is a very, very positive scene when you're going to a local team's broadcast. But from runs per game, the first half, tie for first, 6th in home runs, 8th in stolen bases, 2nd in OPS, is now 26th, 27th, 19th, and 26th, respectively. So clearly there's panic in Pittsburgh. It's the first time they've been good for a long time, so I kind of feel for them. But at this point, to me, that's the only way I could go is fading the Pirates as a road favorite. Don't think they deserve to be it, especially Tyler Phillips, who I think has been underrated for a lot of the season. I do have some interest into under. Braxton Ashcraft's got a great arm, started this year incredibly well for the Pirates, especially after kind of moving into the rotation after not being there for a lot of his career, really being a bullpen arm, though he's very new to Major League Baseball at this point. The thing is, I wonder if he's tiring, and that's a big concern if you're playing under, because I don't want much to do with the Pirates bullpen, though it certainly was improved, retooled at the All-Star or after the All-Star break at the Major League Baseball trade deadline. But Marlins plus 112 looks very interesting. I've already backed them twice this series, and I could see it happening a third time, especially with plus money next to their name. We'll next go to the Cleveland Guardians and Parker Messick on the road at the Detroit Tigers and Cater Montero. Currently, Messick minus 118 road favorite, plus 107 coming back in the Tigers. Total is 8, minus 125 to the over, plus 105 under. And looking for the first 5 number, we got 4, minus 105 to the under, minus 115 to over. So Parker Messick has basically been the savior to the Cleveland Guardians, ended a long losing streak after getting swept at home by the New York Mets in a win on Friday night on the road at Chicago White Sox. But that was, to me, pretty fortunate. White Sox manager made an incredibly juvenile mistake making a second visit and had to take out the starting pitcher in the first inning, which then put their bullpen into disaster mode. And honestly, David Stanley came out of the bullpen, pitched pretty well for 4 innings, but they tried to keep riding him, which is another stupid manager's mistake. But that's neither here nor there at this point, I guess. Somehow I'll forget it, maybe at some point in my lifetime. But anyway, Parker Messick is as solid as they come and is really hard to fade, but he's not going to get much run support from one of the worst lineups in Major League Baseball. The Guardians have playing terribly defensively, which is a big concern for any under interest. But getaway day game, 1:10 first pitch, same time as the Marlins and the Pirates. I'm pretty interested in seeing a low-scoring game here that favors the Tigers. Now, the Tigers traded their stud starting pitchers and Tarek Skubal and Casey Mize. They had expiring contracts end of the season, and pretty much came out of that trade deadline saying we got to out-hit everybody. That's worked fairly well for them. They have a great run differential so far to start the season versus like almost everyone who's seen Major League Baseball's American League who seem to be negative or at least not as impressive. The big question is, can the Tigers pitch enough? And their bullpen has not been as good this year. That's part of why they struggled to start the season. I think had a really bad May, if I'm not mistaken. But then also they've got a wizard as a manager who's great at mixing and matching, at finding ways to get outs. And I still trust Kenley Jansen at the end of a ball game almost as much as any other closer throughout the league. He's certainly not the same as he was wearing Dodger blue, but honestly, he's still really good and is a huge piece at the end, which allows AJ Hinch to be a lot more creative earlier in the game. So Tigers, home underdog, I think are playing much better baseball by default than the Guardians, because I'm not sure who's playing worse at this point for teams that are actually trying to make the playoffs. Guardians bought at the deadline a lot because of a bad American League and bad American League Central Division, but they've not been good either. Jose Ramirez, 2 consecutive errors the last 2 nights. He doesn't seem healthy or anywhere near it. I think the Guardians are a team I'm looking to be against until the market adjusts. So Tigers, for me, plus 107 looks very interesting. An early start. Lean to under 8 and under 4 first 5. Might even get an 8.5 before first pitch tomorrow, depending on lineups, of course. And I don't know if I feel that way with still getaway day games. Usually there's a lot of under money that comes in. So we'll see what happens, because that's usually not a normal situation. Next, we'll go to the Bronx for the Seattle Mariners visiting the New York Yankees. It's a 1:35 Eastern time first pitch. Logan Gilbert towing the bump for the Seattle Mariners. Max Fried going for the New York Yankees. Currently the Mariners plus 124 underdogs. Total in this one, 7.5 minus 102 to under, minus 118 to over. First 5 numbers, you got 4 minus 125 to the under, plus 105 coming back on over. And that's a pretty key number to grab that push on 4 if it lands there. The Yankees certainly didn't start off tonight's game very well on Wednesday night with 2 home runs in the first inning for the Mariners, both to right field, both seemingly was the game plan for Seattle. At least the last 2 nights, the Randy Rosarena had basically hitting the same home run twice. I don't really believe that's going to continue. Yes, there's going to be plenty of right-handed hitters in the lineup for the Mariners against a lefty like Max Fried, but he's honestly so good. The total is tiny for New York Yankee Stadium at 7.5, but it's an early start. I don't necessarily think that the ball flies much better in the daytime than it does at night in the Bronx. I haven't seen any stats that prove that. And these are 2 of the best starting pitchers in Major League Baseball, pitching for teams that have usually really good bullpens. Seattle's is certainly much more questionable at this point. I think deserve to be an underdog, not just because they're on the road, but for that reason. Though it feels a little cheap to me. But neither of these teams are hitting. The Yankees are sorely missing Aaron Judge and maybe Giancarlo Stanton as well. And the Mariners are missing whatever was Cal Raleigh last season, because he's been one of the worst hitters in baseball after hitting 62 or so home runs last season as a catcher. Very interesting. We'll see what that ends up happening later in the season. He's been quoted lately of how poor he's been playing, but that's never really a good sign to me. I don't think it's a motivation thing. Next, we'll go to the Cincinnati Reds visiting the Chicago White Sox. Davis Martin going for the White Sox, holding for more than an inning. Said I was going to forget that, but we're not there yet. Andrew Abbott starting for the Cincinnati Reds. This is a 2:10 Eastern time first pitch. Looks like the Reds are plus 120 underdogs. Total in this one's 8.5 minus 117. First 5, I'll plot that as well. That is 4.5 under to the minus 105, over 4.5 first 5 minus 115. So Andrew Abbott, fly ball pitcher, really great strikeout numbers in the minors, has not really delivered at that level in the bigs, but gets a pretty weak lineup in the White Sox, who somehow have been leading the AL Central, though I think that will change before the end of the year. Davis Martin's been really struggling lately after a great start to the season. You could argue that he's gotten maybe tired potentially, a lot of workload on his shoulders, but really, or single his right shoulder. I still believe that he's a good pitcher, and he's got a Reds team that's not great. Reds had a big comeback win on Tuesday night. I think there's a lot of questions for me about the White Sox, so I'm not really interested in the home underdog there. I think if anything, I like an under game in a low-scoring game, early first pitch again here. Just not sure there's enough for me just yet. Got to think more about that one before I lock that in. Next, go to the Boston Red Sox. Peyton Tolley on the road at the Toronto Blue Jays, and Max Scherzer. Scherzer would have been dealt at the deadline, but no one believed that he could pitch 4 innings. I don't still believe that either. Scherzer, a plus 145 underdog, is enormous considering the Blue Jays took the first 2 games of this series on Monday and Tuesday. Total this one is 8 minus 115 to the under. Honestly, I have very little interest in the under 4 first half, minus 107, minus 113 to over is a little bit more interesting to me, but I'm not really an over player. Longtime Patreon subscriber, patreon.com/real_G1 find all my plays across all sports. Download the app, turn on notifications, get a buzz every time I lock something in throughout the day when I'm trying to grab prices, make sure you don't miss them, all those sort of things. And it's a very affordable monthly rate to get in and really get my Reddits before they get posted on Twitter. Early access is really what I'm trying to do on Patreon for everybody. Get my leans every night, get my plays as I lock them in, Reddits as I finish them, all before they go out on Twitter after the games start. Peyton Tolley's been great. I do wonder how long that'll continue. This is a 3:07 Eastern time start. I'm just not really a believer in road favorites in general, but I don't want anything to do with Max Scherzer. So move next to the Chicago Cubs and Kevin Gausman on the road at the Washington Nationals and Cade Cavalli, 4:05 Eastern time start. Still more daytime games. Cavalli plus 121 underdog, totals 8.5 even money right here to the under, minus 120 to over. Gausman, we'll see what he looks like in the Cubs uniform, was really struggling with the Blue Jays, but kind of finished his career, his tenure there fairly well before he got traded, an emotional moment, all that sort of stuff. Almost then pitched against the Jays in his first start for the Cubs, but he's got a pretty weakened Nationals team who sold a lot at the deadline, have no pitching to start with. Bullpen maybe gotten a little bit more stable lately. I'm just not really a believer in that. And the James Wood injury is huge. The Nationals were smashing the ball. Were, I think, the best hitting lineup in baseball. Take out the best hitter of that, and all of a sudden it's falling on its face. And the Curtis Mead trade didn't help either. Cade Cavalli, apparently an amateur barber, is really talented and more than just cutting hair. Got a sweet undercut, or whatever you call it. It's going under a baseball hat, which is usually crazy because most baseball players have either bald heads or not very kempt out there. But a plus 121 home underdogs is interesting to me for a little bit until I think about how much the Cubs put pressure on their opponents. That's kind of my new word for this season, teams that perform better than expected, because the Cubs offense has been pretty weak, average for a couple seasons, but they win a lot of games because they play great defense, which is not really talked about enough. And they put a lot of pressure on you, and that's something I'm going to stick to. Probably no interest for me in the Nationals, though I do like home underdogs. Now to the night slate, we'll go to the Philadelphia Phillies and Aaron Nola on the road at the Minnesota Twins and Taj Bradley. This new series starting after the Phillies were in St. Louis. Nola, an even money underdog right now on the road at Taj Bradley, minus 110 coming back his direction. Totals 8.5 this one, minus 115 to over. Now, I have no interest in under, so I'm not going to look at the first 5 number here. I want to fade Aaron Nola at all chances, all opportunities, whenever I can, and that's my biggest interest in this matchup. Taj Bradley's got some issues keeping the ball in the park. It's really tough to do against a Phillies team that love to hit home runs, but if they're solo shots, it's a better situation. The Phillies have not been getting on a base much. They've not hit well this year. They've really disappointed, I think, more than anybody, and I think we really should be at this point of the season just realizing the Phillies are aged, and there's a reason why there was questions about their returning or retaining and re-signing Kyle Schwarber. Bryce Harper now trying to play the outfield. Luis Arias, who's come in and I think played better second base than he's ever played in his career, but still is not a good defender. Bohm moving to first base. Like, there's a lot of questions all over there. I don't think what the Phillies have done, they go all in. That's what Dave Dombrowski does. And what have they had to show for it? Yes, they're trying to run through the NL with the Padres, who've been strong, and the Dodgers, who are elite. But I think this Phillies team is one I want to be against. Aaron Nola is not competitive, I don't think, at this point in his career. So give me the Twins minus 110, even with their offensive concerns lately. I think the perfect remedy might be Aaron Nola. 2 more games left to go on a shorter card. Might have some starting pitchers released later, but all I can do is give you what lines are out there now. We'll go to the Texas Rangers as I wear a World Series giveaway. Not the best outfits or cotton probably out there, but they exist. And I guess it's a shirt that's somehow baseball related. If I can get it out of the way from the microphone. There it is, World Series champions. I don't know if we'll see that again in our lifetimes, but here we are. We got the Texas Rangers, Jacob deGrom, a minus 150 favorite on the road at the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. Walbert Urena starting for the Angels, and he's got a great arm. And somehow the Angels, I hope they don't mess it up. Total in this one is 8 minus 115 to over. The first 5 is 4 even money right now to under, minus 120 to over. So Jacob deGrom, I trust him ever since I saw him walking down the streets with long hair in New York City. Not that, that has anything to do with this, but I did basically run into him once. And I thought about saying hi. And I was like, why is he walking around by himself? But no one really approached him. Maybe that's a New York City thing. Anyway, he's going to dominate an Angels lineup that can't hit the ball. Rangers sometimes struggle with the Angels for some reason, even though the Angels have been like the worst franchise across Major League Baseball versus expectations for years. Finally, the market's caught up to that a little bit and doesn't price them the same way as they had when Ohtani was there and Mike Trout. They were easy fade late night games with underdogs on the road, especially the Rays went there and sweep them every time, it felt like. But Urena, I think, can keep the Rangers off balance. I have a lot of concerns with bullpens in this matchup, but we might have, we have a push on 4 right now, the first 5. And that's very interesting to me at the minimum. I usually like to split first 5 and the full game totals, but at least for now, my biggest interest is under 4 first 5 even money. And I love those plus money totals. Last but not least, the Milwaukee Brewers, Shane Drone on the road at the Los Angeles Dodgers and Roki Sasaki, a huge preview of the Major League Baseball playoffs. And I'm looking forward to this more than you can recognize. Brewers plus 129 underdogs on the road, totals 8.5, minus 115 to under. Total first 5, which I'm very unlikely to play with 2 great offenses. Total is 4.5 first 5, minus 105, which feels a little bit low. Dodgers, I thought, kind of played with their food a little bit with the Royals, but ultimately that's a series they should win every single time and twice on Sunday, or literally there should be no hope for the Royals in that series. I don't know if the Dodgers really took as much care of business as they should have, but they're off a really tough stretch. They lost 8 of 9. Honestly, could have gotten swept by the Diamondbacks. Probably should have won the series. Maybe you could argue with a blown save on Friday. But I think on Saturday as well. But I think there's issues with the Dodgers bullpen. Don't really trust their roles at this point in the season. Maybe they'll figure that out at some point, but that's not really their style. They kind of just get through the Major League Baseball season. If they're a 3 seed, they're a 3 seed, and they'll probably still be favored to win the World Series. But Shane Drone's been solid for the Brewers. I don't know that they've had a great road trip. On the verge of getting swept at San Diego in the day game today on Wednesday. Their bullpen is a little bit questionable with Uribe in the 8th, who's got such a great arm, but is really, really hard to trust and makes me kind of watch with one hand or both hands over my eyes. Brewers are a small budget team and really struggles in a low scoring game with the pitching that the Dodgers have, but Roki Sasaki's not one of those. And you have to worry about Blake Snell coming in out of the bullpen or Yamamoto either, because it's not the playoffs. So that's a pretty nice setup for the Brewers. They're fairly cheap right now, plus 129, but that's my biggest interest. The Brewers plus 129, that late nightcap in the Chavez Ravine. Any live viewers, thanks for coming in. Appreciate those that have come in throughout the show. Of course, feel free to throw a comment in and I will read it out, or we can get to the best bet coming end of show. We're 2-0 to start our return to the Betting the Pitch YouTube channel. You can find that at @the_Real_G Warner on YouTube, at @the_Real_G Warner on Instagram for our reels, and of course wherever your podcast, Betting the Pitch, Apple Podcasts, and the Spotify specifically. But should be finding that wherever you can need to go. Do have some plugs for future. Do have a podcast coming out on the NFL with A_Schnicker going through the preseason like futures and such. Not preseason games, but getting us ready for the season, then week 1 all the way to the Super Bowl. Looking forward to that. Have the Need for Seeds college basketball podcast presented to you by the Betting Pitch Podcast Network. That's coming with Big East Ben as we get towards the season, probably November with that one. And trying to get, of course, we're doing soccer podcasts all season, usually by myself, but I have some ideas to potentially get some extra access or some ideas on just trying to get a little bit more maybe team focused specific things on this channel. So looking forward to that. Any comments or questions or ideas, certainly throw them at me. I'll try to execute them. You hit me at @the_Real_G Warner on Twitter, or of course in any of these videos, or leaving a 5-star review. Best way for me to really read what you're doing. And that's huge for the podcast and growth of our little thing here. So 2-0 on our season so far with Major League Baseball's Betting the Pitch podcast, at least that resumed on August 10th, I believe. But this is our best bet for the August 13th card. I need to somehow get to the line so I have exactly what's in front of me. And for our best bet on this episode, like I said, we're 2-0, our first 2 episodes back on YouTube. And certainly happy for that start at this point in the season, trying to keep that going as long as possible. Let's go with the Minnesota Twins minus 110 on Thursday, August 13th. That's our best bet in this episode. Taj Bradley, I'll say it again. He's got some home run issues. Phillies are a scary, scary team for that. And honestly, it makes me wonder if there's going to be some Phillies money that comes in that potentially gives us a Twins underdog, especially after seeing them move to a favorite with Andrew Painter and no bullpen on Monday night in St. Louis. Twins certainly have some issues. The bullpen's been pretty solid. They used a lot of it on Wednesday in the day game to beat the Orioles, but didn't on Tuesday after losing that game. So big series win for the Twins. Their offense has not been as good as it was to start the season, but I'm not so worried about that. I'm more interested in pitching, and I love the arms of Morris and Minter. Not sure I'm totally sold on their closer's name is escaping me at the moment, but the Phillies to me look old, and they do not play good defense. They don't have any great defenders on their team besides Bryson Stott, and he just lost his position to move to third base, probably because his bat doesn't work as well. But I think the Phillies are a team that are going to be great fade material, probably in the playoffs if they do make it, though they're sitting on the outside looking in at this point. And I'm really looking forward to fading them down the stretch when things get dire and they get more nervous, pressure packed, and all those sort of things. So let's go Minnesota Twins minus 110 on the Thursday, August 13th best bet on the ultimate best bet for the Betting the Pitch Major League Baseball podcast. And we'll see you the next time we record, which should be tomorrow night.